Changes occurred in China during the Cold War era. Remember, the Cold War is the hostility between the Soviet Union and the United States from 1945 to about 1989. The thing that you've got to understand more than anything else is that China becomes a communist country, and it is still a communist country today. So remember, there was a civil war between the two groups in China. You have Mao Zedong, the leader of the communists in China. He's in northwest China. And he won the support of the peasants fighting against the Japanese. And he trained the peasants to fight using guerrilla warfare against the Japanese. Another reason why he got their support is because they promised to teach literacy and increase food production, basically making the lives of the peasants better. His rival, his nemesis, was Jiang Jieshi, sometimes known as Chiang Kai-shek. He was the leader of nationalist China. And they were protected by the Japanese from a mountain ranges and an army of 2.5 million. And the U.S. sent $1.5 billion in aid to fight the Japanese. But ultimately, all of the money goes into the leaders of China. And so the nationalists, once the World War II is over in China, the nationalists try to fight the communist Red Army. And this is where we get involved with the hostility between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. The United States supports the nationalists. And even though they have a corrupt leader, because of the Truman Doctrine, where we support people who are not communist, because we want to contain communists, we support them. And the communists are outnumbered 3-1, but the nationalists would not do a good job leading. So since the economy gets worse and worse in China during the Cold War era, a lot of the soldiers go and join the communists. And Mao and his army actually gained control of the country, and the nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, have to go to the island of Taiwan. And you have this real movement in the United States against communism. And because these Chinese, not only were they communists, but they signed a treaty with the Soviets. And they really feel in the 1950s in the United States that there was a communist campaign to take over the world. And remember, that was the goal of Marx, to overthrow the capitalist democratic economies, or capitalist economies but of democratic nations. So you have the creation of what is known as the People's Republic of China, right? And we call it the PRC today. It's 3.5 million square miles. It's huge. And here's Taiwan, this little island right there. So you have the two Chinas, the two China policy. You have People's Republic of China, which is the big country, and Nationalist China, which is right here. So the superpowers, which are the U.S. and the USA and USSR, or Soviet Union, we support either nation. The USSR supports Communist China, the big China, and Mao Zedong, and the USA supports Nationalist China, Taiwan, and Jiang Jieshi. And the Soviets and Communist China agree to come to each other's defense if either were attacked. So China becomes kind of this battleground. Now China wants to expand. People's Republic of China, Communist China moves into Mongolia and Tibet. Those of you who've heard about the Dalai Lama, he is forced to leave Tibet because of the Chinese invasion. So the Chinese are controlling that, right? And then there is, since China has a border here, here's Tibet, here's India, here's China. The Dalai Lama goes into India. Now you have tension between China and India, which still exists today. Then socialism. All right. So Mao Zedong, he's trying to create a Marxist socialist society. And he takes all the land away from the landlords. Anybody who resisted this policy, he kills them, and then he distributes the land among the peasants. He nationalized all private companies, and they're basically copying the Soviet Union. They implemented a 5-year plan like Stalin did, and the Chinese industry triples using communes, and this leads to the Great Leap Forward. And the Great Leap Forward is their idea that they're going to industrialize really rapidly. But unfortunately, the Great Leap Forward, and as you'll be tested, actually leads to a great leap backwards. So, as they become more and more powerful, China begins to kind of resent the relationship with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union kind of likes to be the big brother, and they treat China like a little brother. So the Soviets stopped their aid to China. And because factory workers began to compete for wage increases, promotions, and bonuses, and in China, in the countryside, and also farmers growing crops on private plots. So what Mao says, okay, listen, the Great Leap Forward, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that it happens in a communist way. So he goes to the youth of China and he creates the Red Guard, like these 16-year-old kids. And he says, you need to go to the countryside and we need to have a cultural revolution. So here is a propaganda poster from the Cultural Revolution. We're going to bring back the working man, and we're going to kill anybody who is democratic or anybody who's smart. And literally, 16-year-old kids shut down colleges and schools, and anybody who ever had privilege, they send them to remote villages, and they're purified using labor. Thousands are executed or died in jail, and Mao realizes that he's lost control of this revolution, and he uses the army to stop the Red Guard. So Mao's great leap forward ends up in a great leap backward, and then to regain control of the country, he does a cultural revolution with his Red Guards, his basically high school kids, and they end up leading a revolt in the country. So that is how China becomes a communist country.